Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining today's session, Building Builders in the Age of AI Automation. Today, we're going to be diving into how AI is transforming roles across security and IT operations, from junior analysts to senior engineers, and best practices for alleviating burnout, enhancing resilience, accelerating business operations, and creating more human-centered approach to operations. We'll have plenty of time at the end of our session to answer questions, but feel free to pop into the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen to send over your questions at any point. So let's dive in. I'm Nino Benora, and I lead our global solutions engineering team at Tines. And I'm thrilled to join Connor in this discussion. Our mission at Tines is to power the world's most important workflows. Born in security and now loved by the enterprise, Tines enables businesses of every size to build, run, and monitor their critical workflows and unparalleled flexibility and control. What makes us unique is our secure by design architecture, with agents directly integrated within our storyboard, allowing you to build and define workflows yourself without data leaving your environment. We view AI and automation as two sides of the same coin, with a philosophy centered on flexibility, power, and integration across systems and teams. When deployed effectively, our solution augments your people rather than replacing human judgment, serving as the connective tissue between teams and systems. The right AI and workflow setup empowers organizations to act with speed, precision, and impact, reducing burnout from repetitive tasks, improving response times, and creating scalable solutions, all while ensuring AI is trusted and operationalized securely at scale. Connor, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. And I'm Connor. I head up the managed services division at Uzado, and we're a boutique compliance, security, and IT managed services firm, helping both medium and enterprise businesses maintain and achieve their compliance certification with proactive, high touch, cost efficient services in a way that sets us apart from the rest. And we do that by measuring our success against common compliance frameworks like SOC 2. So by doing that, we can ensure that whether you're currently working towards certification or thinking about one in the near future, many of the required policies, procedures, systems, they're already in place, and there should be minimal shift to actually achieve it. This includes managed GRC on top of managed security, ID, and help desk. And at the end of the day, our goal is to ensure that your technical staff is not bogged down in the day-to-day managing of IT, security, and compliance, and they can focus on being more forward-thinking. And as is the topic of today's discussion, by partnering with us, you'll have a head start in building that team of builders through Uzado's own processes and expertise.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, Connor. And here's a quick overview of everything we're going to chat about in this session. So over this next hour, we'll cover how leaders can stave off burnout and turn their teams into builders instead, why traditional models are broken and how we can pivot away from those models, how we can include in playbooks and how they can be implemented as workflows, how the role of analysts can evolve over time. And of course, we'll have some Q&A. So let's dive in.
Yeah, I was thinking we should probably start with where many teams are today. So for those of you who are currently in the industry, IT and security teams are under constant pressure. They're juggling increasing complexity, rising expectations, growing infrastructure, and just far too much manual work. And traditionally, junior roles for both IT and security were defined by the repetitive and reactive nature of these tasks.
Exactly. And now AI is starting to automate some of those tasks, resetting passwords, rolling out patches, triaging low-level alerts, and that's great. That's some good news. But in the place of those repetitive tasks, a lot of technical teams are feeling some uncertainty, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's natural. And realistically, I think we should probably take a step back and say that not everything will be automated. There
True.
will always be specialists. I mean, I don't think we'll have any disagreements there. And deep expertise will always matter. So for those of you that are chasing certifications or have certifications, it's still going to be essential. And I like to think of it as a kind of 80-20 rule. 80% of the routine work will realistically be streamlined and should be, But that 20%, it's always going to require, or for the most part, will require hands-on intervention. And some things that would fall into this category would be, forensics, on-prem or critical systems with data governance constraints, deployments. How are we going to get these workflow solutions or AI solutions actually embedded, right? So people are going to always be integral in that extent. But even with all that in mind, there's still an undercurrent of anxiety. So I think that we should probably pause and talk about the elephant in the room, because I know this is on a lot of people's minds. When we talk about AI and automation, especially in AI and security, is AI replacing jobs? And what happens to early career professionals like IT admins, support engineers, security analysts when their work is actually automated?
I think that's a great question, and one that's totally valid as we all figure out where AI fits into our workflows, into our daily lives, really. Our point of view is that the idea that AI replaces those junior, less tenured roles, it's not only outdated, but it's short-sighted, really. The reality is this: AI shouldn't attempt to eliminate those junior roles. It should elevate and accelerate them. We should be looking at ways to use AI to help advance the careers of those individuals, get them into those senior roles a lot faster. So this conversation, Connor, really isn't about job loss. I don't think anybody on here should be thinking that. It's really about job evolution and creating the space for the next generation of IT and security professionals to grow faster and go further.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's really up to us to even start that conversation, because a lot of companies are looking at AI as a means of cutting down on staff, but it shouldn't be, because in the long run, that's never going to work out.
No doubt. So why don't we take a step back and talk about why the traditional models aren't working anymore? And it's very simply, it's because security and really, security and general IT really share a big problem: rigid processes, endless tickets, rote troubleshooting. All of that leads to boredom, burnout, slow career growth, turnover. We're just That human element, that creativity is just not a part of a lot of the tasks that our team members execute.
Yeah. And, a part of that is, junior roles traditionally just aren't built for growth. You come in, you follow a playbook, you close the tickets, and you repeat. And these entry level IT admins and analysts, they're often stuck in tasks with little context or creativity. And there's little connection to the mission or impact that they're actually providing. And, today's workforce wants more. People are entering the workforce, and when they're early in their career, they want to have purpose, they want to have ownership. And these current structures are holding them back. But with AI, you can finally get it. And AI enables them to take on more creative work, look at more big picture problems, especially if you pair them up with people who have already done the work in the past. And really, like, one of the bigger philosophies behind all this is trying to make everybody's role more conversational, collaborative, right? So mentorship is going to come up often in this conversation. So when you pair them up with good mentors, they're actually going to get a proper foundation, and they're going to get a very good appreciation for the creative work that they're actually implementing. And so it's important to not lose sight of the human element around AI. You should let AI execute the tasks, but let people bring ideas, learn from mentors, and do the meaningful work.
What we're really doing is we're proposing that we sort of turn the thought process that people have on its head, right? How can we leverage AI to create that space for the mentorship and the meaningful work instead of just thinking, how do we take tasks off people's plates, really?
Oh, without a doubt, because we're not really removing tasks, we're just shifting tasks to be more efficient. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, look, now that we've talked about why that old model is broken, let's talk about what this new model actually is. What are we really proposing as we're thinking through this? And I think we can boil it down to AI and automation can now handle those known patterns, like the password resets. Like you said, we're shifting those tasks. We're not getting rid of them. We're going to let AI and automation take care of that. Software rollouts, triage, detection, things like that. And the humans, they're going to build the systems. They design the logic. They set the guardrails. They improve these outcomes over time. This is where the creativity comes into play as well. The building and designing of those systems. It really taps into that human element. And let's make it real. Let's use an example. So a junior IT admin can use automation to remediate a failed patch and investigate the root causes rather than closing those tickets manually. Let the automation handle that. A junior security analyst can build a workflow to detect and respond to shadow IT without having to write a script or again do some manual detection. That streamlined process, those processes open up the door for these same individuals, these technical teams, to then start making a different kind of contribution.
And before we move forward, by the way, Nino, I mean, Tines already has a library with this content in there. These examples that you're talking about, there's already ways that you can see them live or implement them live and test them out.
That's a great point. That story library has over 1,000 stories across different use cases, so that you're not starting with a blank canvas. Instead, you've got that workflow, and then you just tune it to your needs. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And what we're really seeing is, and we're actually seeing this shift in real data. It's you and I are proposing. We're having a conversation here, but we're actually seeing this in some data. Earlier this year, Tines partnered with AWS to sponsor research from IDC, and in this Voice of Security report, they found that AI is being used most for summarization, alert triage, and reducing manual work. Exactly what we were just talking about, ripe for automation.
Yeah, and realistically, leveraging AI just for that type of summarization just isn't good enough. Realistically, in an ideal world, and obviously this is like utopian, hopefully we get there, right? In an ideal world, no human would ever need to look at a false positive. They should be building something more meaningful. They shouldn't be spending time summarizing the data or looking it over. They should be using their time for creative problem solving. Because when it comes down to brass tacks, if you have a real incident, for any practitioners, in the managed space or IT ops or security ops, when you have a real incident, your snap response is everything. And leaving that initial investigation or that initial triage in the hands of a human, while it may be, all encompassing, it's a little slower. So if you can have tools that are already starting the process, gathering the data, or even, for those of you that do like a root cause analysis, do the root cause analysis, because that's no fun, right? You want AI to start doing this stuff, and even start looking at having AI look at the true positives. This is where we really start seeing the opportunity for building and growing and, adding value on top of just cutting out the noise.
So are you suggesting that even when it comes to true positives, because we think, oh, well, when it's a true positive, I need my human in the loop. Are you suggesting that we should be, maybe if we can remove the false positives, then humans can use their creativity to build solutions for the true positives when they arrive?
Oh,
or maybe
absolutely.
even beforehand, plan for this?
Yes. Yes. I mean, AI is nothing but data, right? It's just very good at playing with data. So if you can give it the data, and I'm extremely bullish on this idea that, solving true positives before they even become a problem is, that's a logical step in the progression here. And that's really kind of building that team of builders. You want people constantly building solutions to problems that haven't even came up yet, right? So yeah. Anyways, I think
Interesting.
we should probably come back to the junior role and talk about what that looks like in this new world. So realistically, there should be a shift to focus on the soft skills needed to succeed. So, curiosity, problem solving, adaptability, communication, these are all paramount. And in addition to traditional certs, there'll also be an emphasis on, taking initiative, critical thinking, you know, having the ability, realistically, it's having the ability to couple knowledge you get from certification with soft skills to bring out the more human elements behind these technical roles, to be more conversational. And secondly, there should be new opportunities created. So tools like Tines, they enable junior team members to build real automation in hours and not months. It's going to enable cross-functional rotation models for juniors across patching, access, threat response, compliance, you name it. It's going to enable a boost in retention because a lot of the time, historically, when you look at a rotation model from the business perspective, it's a very front loaded and expensive way of getting someone into a role that they really enjoy. And I think it's critical, obviously, to invest in the next generation of talent because that's really a big theme here. But by leveraging AI, we're going to be able to get that ramp up time be shortened. You're actually going to be able to alleviate your more senior resources that are mentoring the team to work on the solutions that they were building initially and just stay close to it because these LLMs, these AI tools, they're conversational by nature. So all of a sudden now you're able to look at these junior roles not just as entry points, but they're launch pads. And that's leagues away from what I walked into when I joined the industry.
That's an interesting point because in my career, moving people around and doing that sort of rotation, the stumbling block has always been, oh, but it's going to take them months to learn that role. And by that point, the rotation is halfway over or almost over. Oh, we don't have the time to devote to ramping somebody up just to have them walk away after a couple of months, go to the next rotation. So you're suggesting that AI automation can help get people ramped faster in these rotational roles?
Absolutely, because again, what is AI other than data, right? So
Right.
I mean, even if you look at just like the typical large language models, but on top of that, the LLMs that Tines has implemented natively in their platform as well, it's conversational. If you have a question, maybe it isn't tied back to your standard operating procedures, but it should be because then, when you have a new intern come in or a new hire at an entry level role, and they're curious about your patch management policy, they just go over to your tool and say, "Hey, what's the cadence for company X?" Because in managed services we have multiple customers, right? And then the
Yeah.
LLM will be able to just put that right back out there. And so all of a sudden, the mentor doesn't need to stand over their shoulder asking relatively trivial questions, critical questions, but trivial in nature.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes total sense. So junior team members are building automations, collaborating across departments, they're in the rotation, et cetera. And AI is handling the repetitive work that used to bog those technical teams down, used to be that bar that we couldn't get over for like the rotations and the mentorship and things like that. So what about the impact on the senior roles, those mentors that are coming in?
Well, as junior roles, naturally the senior roles, they need to as well. And realistically, the value of the senior practitioner now is going to lie in their ability to, and this isn't new, but there are pieces of it that are new, right? So it's their ability to architect workflows, troubleshoot complex edge cases, and guide strategic direction. And in this new model, they're able to focus on designing the architecture for automation. And, this is another thing is troubleshooting those edge cases. So this is kind of where the analyst role gets shot up the chain now to being in the more senior roles is it's going to be the senior experts that need to get in there and do the work. And this is where traditional certs are going to be critical. You need to have someone be able to jump in and do the work when it needs to be done. And obviously, mentoring, upskilling junior teammates, and acting as strategic leads for resilience and innovation. And realistically, what this means in practice is that the day-to-day senior IT staff are going to become AI workflow designers and system architects. Well, the senior security professionals are going to design the AI-driven detection logic and guide complex investigations. And it's really going to be a more conversational role. It's less sitting in a terminal alone and having a little chat with everybody that you're working with. So both are going to play a critical role in shaping team direction and mentoring for the next generation of great talent, whether it's in IT or security.
Totally agree. Totally agree. But let's zoom out a bit. We've been talking a little bit about the individual team members. Let's zoom out and talk about what it means for the entire organization. It's not just about how we help the individual team members, although that's important and we can argue probably the most important aspect of this. There are some impacts to the organization as well. For example, AI and automation can help to reduce that burnout and ticket fatigue. We've talked about that quite a bit in this conversation. Leaders can create those clearer growth paths for individuals, which can be accelerated by AI and automation, from intern to builder to architect to strategist, as you suggested, with those senior roles. And I think one of the most important aspects, being able to tap into the human creativity of the analysts, that's going to create higher engagement and retention, especially among early career talent when they're starting to, from an early stage, leverage their own personality, their own creativity. They're not just cycling through tickets, as we talked about.
Yeah, and just to kind of jump in there's nothing more important to me and near and dear than actually mentoring the next generation of talent in this framework, because it's these people are coming in, they're scared, they don't really understand. I talk to people that are in university, they don't understand what the next step in their career is because they see all the bullish headlines. AI eradicates entire division, that company XYZ. So it's definitely important to get the conversation around human creativity and things of that nature.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Also, from an organizational perspective, the infrastructure will be more scalable, more resilient operations across all aspects of IT and security. And finally, you'll have a new level of agility where you can better adapt to evolving threats, technologies, and business needs. By adopting this shift, you're not just making people happier, you're making the entire organization stronger.
Yeah, without a doubt. And ultimately, what we're getting at today is that AI should be used to augment and empower analysts, not to eliminate their role completely. By leveraging AI, organizations can help the junior members level up to senior members faster. They, of course, still need to learn the day-to-day tasks. There's no getting around that. But AI can help them do that as well, freeing up, those mid-range career employees to actually, build the product as we're talking about, and just kind of stay close to the mentorship until they're ready to really get mentored. And as a result, it's going to help these junior members become seniors way quicker. They're going to see the impact, the bigger picture.
And by freeing teams from the toil and the friction, AI makes room for a new kind of talent. Builders who design, improve, and adapt systems, not just maintain them. That's what we mean when we talk about building the builders of the future.
Yeah.
So how do we enable this? We need tools and we need infrastructure that supports the shift. It's not just a people uh, situation. There's a process and a technology aspect to this. Drag and drop tools for building automated workflows. Getting these tools into more hands so that more people can leverage AI and automation, and then again free up their creativity. Orchestration platforms that centralize data, actions, and AI, all without vendor lock-in. For example, creating a single data model, all your data from disparate tools coming into one system to get the full picture of an incident. You can aggregate that, you can enrich that, you can export it, all within a shorter period of time. It's
Just to jump in there,
accessible.
too. I
What's
can't.
that?
I was just going to say, just to jump in there for a minute, being a consultant, being in managed services, orchestration is like, it's worth its weight in gold because you have so many different systems and so many different, customers and playbooks and everything else that, being able to get that single pipeline and a drag and drop solution,
Mhm.
it just knocks my socks off every time because I don't know how you would do it without having this single pipeline. You'd be chasing around 100 different systems at once, and there would just be no meaningful work to be done anymore because you'd just be chasing your tail.
Great point. Great point. And finally, it's accessible and secure AI that augments the human work rather than replacing it. Right? We've been talking about that quite a bit. That we're not looking to replace, we're looking to augment. But in order to do that successfully, we need to make sure that AI is not just accessible, but it's also secure. It has to be private. We have to make sure that we trust the work that AI is doing for us. So when you put these pieces together, you can go from idea to execution in hours. That's what powers the entire DevSecOps strategy. We can't wait months. We have to respond to, as you suggested, how do we prepare for the true positives? We can't take months preparing for those. We have to be able to do that in hours, in days. And
Yeah,
that's what automation provides. Go ahead.
and when you think about it too, I mean, one of the big things about Tines that you always talk about is, it's really about taking playbooks and turning them into workflows. So when you have a true positive, you have a playbook. So isn't it just intuitive to want to take that playbook of steps and just make it into a workflow anyways?
Yeah. It's not only is it intuitive, but you can start to analyze that run book, that playbook, and figure out what are the aspects that I want to hand off to AI. What are the tasks in this playbook that are best suited for just letting AI and agents do that work? Where do we get the humans in the loop? So you start to analyze those run books and really start to determine what's the most effective way to handle these true positives that are coming in. And again, how do we, without sacrificing the human that's in the loop, as we talked about, how do we make sure that we're still leveraging their creativity and leveraging their skill sets to the best of their abilities as we're executing these run books?
Yeah, and it's kind of like the advent of this building teams of builders. When you first start, it's a lot of R&D and testing. So, taking those playbooks and turning them into workflows and automated actions, really quick, what's going to work and what isn't going to work yet. And, and then it starts being conversational. So you're already starting to see glimpses into this, future of automation everywhere and everybody's creative and building and growing.
Yeah. So why don't we wrap up with a few takeaways? I think first of all, we just need to understand AI isn't a threat. It's a tool for growth. If we think about it in that way, then we can unlock the creativity, the human side of this, and we can start to see some real benefits for the organization.
Yeah. And if you want to maximize the benefits of that, you'll need to rethink how you hire, onboard, and empower talent in both IT and security.
Great point.
That means putting an emphasis on hiring soft skills, paying more attention to creativity and curiosity. Empathy and, collaboration are going to be pillars of this future. And realistically, your junior staff can be your biggest source of innovation. They're eager and willing. You just need to give them the space to build.
The reality is that the future belongs to the teams that cultivate these builders from the beginning of their tenure. Building a staff of not just experts, but mentors, building a staff that understands that they're empowered and have the space to leverage their creativity in order to solve the problems for the business.
Yeah.
Now, I know we've covered a lot on what it means to build builders in the age of AI. Connor, why don't we open it up to the audience for questions?
Love it. What do we got?
So the first question, how can leaders identify when their teams are stuck in burnout loops caused by outdated models versus just being under-resourced?
Oh, I like this one. So anybody that's ever worked with me in the past know that I have this really corny saying, and it's data rules everything around me. So if you get it, if you don't get it, it's fine. But essentially what it means is, it's all about the context that you can drive into your data. So being in, consulting and managed services, you will have lots of information that needs to be normalized. And if you can normalize those tasks, then you can start identifying the tasks that are repetitive by nature. And then the other thing that you need to do, which is kind of a contentious issue with a lot of, staff members, is rigid time tracking. And it's not rigid time tracking to identify where you can start cutting costs, but instead where you can start looking to automate. And so when you have good parameterized tasks, which can be normalized into categories, and then on top of that, you can also get a very good picture of how much time is being spent on each of them. You're going to get a very good picture of how much work is being done just by, chicken pecks, just going back to the same problem over and over again. And all of a sudden you'll get a good idea of, if we spend an hour automating this, then we're going to get better quality life for our analysts, and they're going to be freed up to look at the bigger picture.
Great answer. Great answer. Second question that we have here, how will AI automation affect non-coders professionally? I've got some thoughts here. Yeah, I've got some thoughts here. Let me jump in, and then you can be thinking about it. I think it's in a couple of ways. I think number one, just like with our professionals who are on the technical side of it and freeing time for them, I think AI and automation can free time for individuals on the business side also. There's no reason why they can't take advantage of the space and the creativity also. Think about, what other problems do I want to solve as a business owner, as a business analyst, someone who understands how the business runs, and then collaborate, partner with the rest of the IT organization on how to make that a reality. I think we can accelerate getting to those solutions faster, allowing people to think through, how can we really leverage this to move the business? And then secondly, I think from an automation perspective, there's an opportunity for non-technical folks to become builders themselves. Are they going to take on the really gnarly type of core IT in the bowels type processes? No, but we can put tools like this, these drag and drop tools that have the flexibility, that have very low ramp time, leveraging AI in the hands of our business professionals, and let them solve some of their problems on their own.
I love that, actually. Again, just being a consultant, enabling people to do stuff is really all I do. So that's a great take for sure.
Next question. What examples have you seen using AI this way without cutting any staff?
Oh, I like that. And I mean, again, the examples are mostly outlined in the presentation. Just, when you implement AI, and something that I always bring back to my team as well is, your free time should be spent thinking, and creating ways to give yourself more time to think and build. So when you have, you know, you have AI that all of a sudden wipes out 40 hours of work in a month for XYZ, all of a sudden now you can look at having your team start to augment in talent. Because the worst thing that you can do in the world is get rid of good talent. It's so hard to come by. And when you find it, you know, good talent is able to be molded and bent into the right role at the right time. And so being able to adapt is critical. So, you know, when AI comes in and gets rid of a bunch of hours, I look at my team and I say, now go find those hours elsewhere. You know, go build something to get rid of more hours so that on the business side, our sales team can go and grow the company more. And all of a sudden, everybody's quality of living is better. And, you know, we're building a product that we can really hang our hats on.
Absolutely. You touched on the satisfaction, the motivation, and the commitment to the organization when somebody knows that they'll spend the majority of their time doing more meaningful work, doing more work that allows them to tap into their creativity, solve more difficult problems that have better, higher positive impact to the organization. That's what our team members want to do. And we have an opportunity to do that. We don't want to cut staff. Instead, let's point them in the direction of the hardest problems to solve in the organization, for sure. Next question. Could you give us 3 examples of the most common or efficient use cases for automation, for example, in a SOC?
Ooh, I mean, that's a complex question as is, because it's kind of the golden question, right? And there's so many different ways to look at what is efficient, what is common. So, I mean, you can take a look at the business perspective and you can say you can use AI to, you know, summarize data, as we were saying earlier, and get the right information out. But you can also use data or AI to, you know, identify patterns and have more complex detections. You know, if you have a detection that's just looking at, you know, malicious IP detected, then all of a sudden you can start using AI to look at a big data set and say these malicious IP detected, they don't really mean anything unless these future, you know, pieces of data are true as well. And thirdly, use AI to quickly resolve it as well. You know, you don't want to give AI the reins by any means, but you also have the ability to use AI to look at less rigid playbooks for automatic closure, you know, back to malicious IP detected. If this IP has been seen, you know, for the last like month and it's constantly been blocked, you know, you can have a database or a query that's running on that, and the AI can just go through the data set and say, you know, 99% of the time it fails, and the other time it gets through, it's actually reset anyways. So it's clearly not getting anywhere. And I mean, that's just off the rip, top of mind.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that if you zoom out a little bit, it's, what are those manual tasks that, as you mentioned, are repeatable or have some patterns to them? Those are the ones that are ripe for automation. Those are the ones that we can look at and say it happens this way all the time. Whether it's, like you suggested, triaging an alert or taking some sort of action, you can zoom out and just look to see, as we're executing on these as a team, what are those patterns? Whether we see the patterns, or as you suggested, we actually apply AI to help us figure out what those patterns are. Those are use cases that would be great for automation.
Oh my goodness, it's crazy when you actually look at the research as well in industry and look at, like, you know, like the AI SEM, but also the AI SOC and things of that nature. You know, there's so much good research coming out now that it goes back to my point of data rules everything around me. All security analysts really are is data processing machines. You're just becoming very efficient at understanding what is bad and what is good, what file locations are often exploited for, you know, further privilege escalation, or what's being exploited for lateral movement. So if you can have AI start identifying those common patterns and pair that with, you know, like your identity and access management tool and you figure out what the job descriptions are, and all of a sudden you have accounting that's calling, net to get network information, that's a big problem. But every time net gets called, you can't have an analyst look at it, but AI can. So, that's a good point.
Yep. All right, great. Next question. You mentioned AI should augment, not replace. How can you determine what level of AI makes sense per workflow? Oh, that's a great question. Let me take a first cut at it, and then you jump in. I think that when you understand the inputs and the outputs and how you need to get from point A to point B, that's great for your traditional workflow, your deterministic type workflow. When you have a question, when you know the question that you want to ask, but you're not quite sure, and you know some possible outputs, some possible answers, but you're not quite sure how to get there or which answer is the correct answer, that's a great place to use AI, because you can point the AI at the data sources, at the tools, and let it figure out the proper path in order to get to one of those answers. Within a workflow, it could be enrichment. Like, we know how to get the data in, but we're not quite sure how to process the data. We're not quite sure what other tools are needed to augment that data to get the full view of the answer or the solution. That's when I would start thinking, hey, maybe I can use AI for this. Maybe an agent is the right tool for this in order to get to one of those possible answers. What do you think, Connor?
I really couldn't add anything that you didn't already kind of mention there. But again, it's really about getting the data and figuring out what to do with the data and getting answers. And it goes back to R&D. It's going to enable you to look at far more information with less, people power.
Yeah. That's another great use case for it within a workflow, for sure. Especially if you're not exactly sure, well, what are the right data sources to pull that information? We have just data everywhere, a mountain of data. It would be impossible for me to choose or sift through or know exactly which one. Mm-hmm. Let AI do it for you.
Yeah.
Next question here. For organizations that are still mostly manual today, how can they balance implementing AI automation with maintaining security and operational control?
I can jump in there if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
It's all about, and this is actually like trick of the trade, it's all about doing the boring work first. If you're mostly manual, how rigid are those processes? And honestly, I hope they're rigid, and that kind of sucks. But at the same time, that is going to be where you can identify those slight little gaps that might be risky. So document everything, get it down to a science, and then just start. Because if you don't start, then you're going to have this big mountain of work to do and you're going to get flustered. You just need to pick a starting point and go for it and take time, and you'll get better and better at automation in time. So my best advice to you is do the boring stuff and just start.
Yep. And what I'd add to that is do the boring stuff and just start with the auditability, right? We have to have the visibility into what AI and automation is doing, whether that's built into the solution that you're using or whether you have to build it in. Find a way to surface the important information so that you can maintain that control, so that you can answer the governance questions, the compliance questions that will ultimately come your way as you're moving down this path on this journey.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's critical because you also don't want, hands-free AI making all your decisions, because if there is technological misstep, then you're really in trouble, right? So auditing, that's critical.
No doubt, no doubt. Thanks everyone for the questions. Keep them coming. We've got another one here. For organizations just starting with automation, how do you balance quick wins like automating repetitive triage with longer term goals like redesigning workflows or shifting senior roles towards strategy? I love this question because it gets to not just the technology part of it, but the people side of it, the commitment, the motivation, some of the psychology of it. And I couldn't agree more. It's you got to get those quick wins when you're embarking on this journey. It can't be you can't see the first speck of benefit 6 months, a year later. People are going to lose interest. They're not going to believe that AI and automation are a viable solution. So as you're going through your prioritization exercise, pick a few that from a time perspective will get you there faster. Pick something that may not have the most value to the organization, but has enough value that there's and visibility that people are going to notice. That way, when you do execute on it, you can get that quick win. That quick win will generate the momentum. That's going to generate belief. And once you start to have that belief, you can stack up those wins. And that's when you can, in parallel, start really redesigning those workflows and looking at those longer term projects and injecting those into the priority order. But absolutely be deliberate about how do we get those quick wins early and often with some visibility, with some value, so that we can generate that momentum.
Yeah. And just to kind of piggyback on that as well, when you first start, it's very important to look at, microservices was at one point kind of a buzzword, but you want to look at it as all of your quick wins should be on a normalized data model, because that way, when you have enough of them, then all of a sudden you do have a big product. You can start plugging them in together. You have enrichment over here, and then you have a customer service conversational LLM over here, and you can actually just start tagging them together, and they can start working independently and together. And that's really where you start getting the longer term goals to start take shape, because you never really know where you're going to go until you're there with a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely. So we have a question here, a very technical question. I wanted to know if the Tines product has support for connecting to O365 for the email sending service with a new MS OAuth 2 authentication through the Microsoft API graph. That is in its internal SMTP engine natively, not only for managing workflows, but also for internal notifications. That is definitely one that we want to follow up on and get into some details. The short answer is yes, but we should probably talk through exactly what you're looking for in that case, exactly what you're trying to accomplish there, so that we can make sure that that the solution that we would propose is the one that's right for you in that use case. So please, reach out. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Short answer is yes, but there's probably some conversation behind that we would want to do. Okay. So last question. If we look 2 to 3 years ahead, how do you think the role of a builder will evolve as AI capabilities mature? Okay, Connor, be the futurist. Tell us what the future is going to look like.
I love this question because it's all I want to talk about. I'm extremely bullish on AI. I think it's a great tool that's going to empower and elevate people, and that's why I want to have this conversation so bad and in front of an audience, is making sure that AI is integral to people, not just on their own, right? So when you look 2 to 3 years in the future, I think that our jobs are going to be extremely conversational. I think it's going to be talking to AI and having it propose solutions, and really, it will be the junior team member and maybe even the mid-level member, and it's going to be on the humans to get together and describe where we want to go, and they'll have a conversation with the senior team, and the junior team will sit in on that and get mentored as well. And I can realistically think that we're both going to be more involved in technology and less, because it's going to be sitting together and talking. It's not going to be all about getting into a console and programming.
Love
I
it.
don't. That's pretty utopian, but I like the idea, so we're gonna go with that.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you again, everyone who joined our session today, whether you were just listening in, or thank you to the many thoughtful questions that came in. And of course, thank you, Connor, for the great conversation. I really enjoyed spending this time with you.
It's always a pleasure, Nino, and likewise.
So if you want to catch up on anything you may have missed, we'll be sending the recording out tomorrow. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. And thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.